As we continue on our packing quest here in the cave, I have a few items going into the stash shop today, some in the moving sale and some in like the main part. So I have a few of the eclectic erudite items that have been left over from our various campaigns. This is an A4 print by the lovely Jessie, who is eclectic erudite. There's only 5 of these guys and they're absolutely gorgeous. These were some of the spooky bookies, the Halloween notebooks. You can see they're lined. These were left over from October. Again, there's only a couple of them left. I really don't want to have to take them with me. I'd rather make some fresh ones for next year. This one's my favourite because it's got sparkly bits in it. So if you fancy one of these for maybe somebody for Halloween, or even just for yourself if you like things like that, they're available for you there too. There are other items available. I have paint and things in there as well, but the other main attraction that a lot of you have mentioned and been waiting for is these. This is my own personal set of the Black Widow pencils. For the most part, they're in pretty good condition. There are a few that are fairly short and it's just breakages. It's not because of use, this one here especially, that yeah, the light yellow, that sprung to mind. So that has both of the skin tone sets in it, the original 3 sets, so the Black Widow, the Scorpion and the Cobra, and also the Monarch pencils as well, which was one with the stag on the front. So that is what that consists of. I wish I had more of these to give away because I know there's more than one of you that are really after this set of pencils, and I'm sorry that I don't have any more to give. These are on sale for a very reasonable price and it's just first come first served. Okay, now that excitement's over, so go and check out everything else that's on the website. The live link to this website is down in the description, so clicky off you go, and let's get on with this video. Hi everyone and welcome back to the Colour Cave, where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and today we have a book review and I'm really excited to show you this book. This is actually one of my favourite instructional art books that I own. I still refer to this regularly. There is one thing I dislike about the book, and it's the only thing I dislike about the book, and it is a major downside, and that is it is huge. It's just a really odd format and I've got no idea why they thought this would be a good idea. It's weird sitting on your bookshelf, and if you're using it sitting at a desk and you've got it open, it takes up, you know, my desk's big here, and it takes up like a good third of my desk when it's lying open. That is the only negative thing I have to say about this entire book. So it is Drawing Trees, and it's from the Walter Foster series, and it is by William F. Powell. The reason I love this book so much is, apart from the fact that it's trees, is that I have grown with this book and it is still of use to me, even as someone who draws trees all the time and actually uses trees as a comfort blanket. When I get really stressed and really overwhelmed, I like to draw and paint trees because I find it very therapeutic. It's nice to have a book like this that looks like a book for beginners to still be of use as a reference book much further down the line. Yeah, I really like this. So I bought this years ago when I first started drawing, and I paid the recommended retail price on the back cover, which is £6.99, which is $10.95 US and $14.95 Canadian. I don't know if this book is still the same price, but if it is, that is the best £7 or $10 or $15 you're ever going to spend. So it says up here, 40-page step-by-step drawing book, and it gives you a little idea of the type of things you're going to look at. This book is so well structured and set out. It's really easy and clear to get what you need to, and that's one thing I really love about it as well. I like the format of this book because I'm a very orderly and regimented person, and that is the style of the layout of this. So there's a little bit on the inside cover about some of the other Walter Foster books that are available, and they've got this sort of opening blurb here and the contents page as well. As with a lot of these types of books, the first part is materials that you're going to use, and they talk about all the different things, and you've seen most of these in the cave at some point by now. So it's nice that that's there. When we come over the page as well, this is the part that I feel is really good if you are a beginner, because they talk about the different phrases that they use for shading: gradating with pressure, gradating with hardness, stippling, scumbling, burnishing, and you can go through all these, you can try them out, but they show you them in reference to what you're actually going to be drawing, which is a tree. So really handy, and also very relevant as well. Even the layout, like the paragraphs are all short and punchy, and it's tiny snippets of information that is digestible, just one little step at a time. If you're absolutely brand new to drawing, you could sit with this double page of shading techniques. This would maybe take you 15 minutes to practice, and you know, that could be you for the day and you would have learned something. Absolutely lovely. And I think as well, the fact that they've included some techniques certainly that I wouldn't use on a regular basis, like indenting, which is, you know, where you actually make marks on the paper before you start using your pencil. It's nice that they've included that too. So they're talking a little bit about surfaces and texture here. So these are like 1-page lessons on aspects that are going to affect how you draw your trees. And all of these things can be applied to other subjects as well. This is not specific to trees, which is again why I think that this book is really, really good. So they do talk about things like foliage here, but in these steps here, we're talking about shorter strokes for depth, light vertical strokes to create contrast. So if you've got something light coloured in your foreground, you can use these vertical lines, which that really straightforward and simple technique. But again, this may not be something as a much more, as a more seasoned artist, you might not use this. It might not be in your style, but it's encouraging you to try it and see if it makes gives it like a fresh outlook on your artwork or just something new to try. They talk about values as well, and shading and values, that's something I talk about a lot in all my videos anyway. So again, this is included, but in the context of a tree trunk so that it is relevant to what we are doing. So you can see here, these are all colour coded as well, and these are more really basic drawing lessons just applied to the subject matter. So we talk about perspective and we also talk about composition as well. And they really are the fundamentals, like they are the absolute basic building blocks of drawing, full stop, never mind when you get into trees. Okay, so the first point regarding actual trees, and this is so valid, because many species of tree look similar, the best way to tell them apart is to draw them. Carefully observe and then sketch the distinctive shapes and characteristics of different trees, making notes of your observations to trigger your memory when using for sketches or reference in the future. And there's a little bit here about creating a personal reference library. I would call that a project book, just of trees, and you would take the time to study a particular type of tree and maybe draw from 2 or 3 angles and then build them up in a book. That's a fun exercise. It's a great learning exercise, but also then you've built your own reference book as well. Okay, so here we get on to some of the really fun things, and they talk about the basic shapes and the stages that you're going to go through to get to something that looks a little bit more like a tree. And this, I think this is a spectacular looking tree, and it's not that complicated. If you are newer to drawing and you attempt this, it's amazing how quickly you get to this stage, and it's really, really satisfying. Sticking with what they were saying earlier about trees being different shapes, this is the thing that I find most useful now, because I have gone through this book and used it. When I am maybe taking a photograph to draw from later, or I'm trying to draw from memory, or maybe I just want to make up my own tree, I remember these specific parts, and the first thing I do is, what kind of shape is this tree? Is it a tall, sort of long and pointy tree? Is it a spade shape? Is it a big leaf shape, or is it a semicircle, like a crescent shape? That in itself is really great. If you're used to creating your own landscapes, or you do like sort of fantasy art, that piece of information is really helpful in itself. And you can see there are a great variety of trees here. So again, if you are a more advanced artist, this is great, even just for practice to copy straight from and to get the feel for that different type of tree shape. So here we're getting into some more exotic things like palm trees and the weeping willow trees down here as well. And they give you little tips on the way if you come across things that maybe aren't so familiar. So for example here, this is very, very dark pencil work here, and this is a bristle cone pine. And they say here, use the sharp point of an HB pencil to draw the needles. A dark variation should be applied using the side of a 2B pencil. So very specific information to help you out there. And again, obviously this can be applied to other things. Okay, so now they've talked about actual tree shapes. The next logical step is to talk about the shape of the foliage. Now, the shape of the foliage and the shape of the tree are not the same thing. When we talk about the foliage, we're talking about the leaves. So we're looking at specific leaves here, and what they're going to look like collectively as well as individually. So for example here, sugar pine needles form in clusters of 5. I never knew that until I had this book. But you keep that in the back of your head when you go to be drawing your pine trees. And there's some really detailed drawings here of the specific leaves as well. So if you're drawing your tree closer up and you're going to be putting in more detail, you've got that as reference as well. And next is a lesson on tree trunks, and this personally is my favourite part. I like doing the trunks more than I like doing the leaves. And there are so many different textures here, so many different textures. So there's a couple of step-by-steps here, and that's another really nice thing about this book is the steps are very small, and it's not one of these ones where there's 4 steps and you go from like a basic outline to a finished oil painting. They are quite fair in that sense. And for example here, if we look at the birch tree trunk, you can see very clearly what's been done in this step, and you can see the actual direction of the mark making for the shading in the final part as well. And again, that's that's a couple of minutes exercise, but if you sit and do that, you can then apply that to your trees. So I like the simplicity, but at the same time, the detail in these as well. And then we go on to branches and boughs. So again, a little bit of technical information. Look at this from a 3D perspective. And these little diagrams are quite helpful as well to get it right in your mind, you know, what something should look like. And they've done, again, the same here with the trunk of the pine tree here. And this is also just peppered like all the way through with these tiny little hints that'll just can make such a difference to your drawings. Down here it says, add shading to convey roundness of the twisting limbs. Your shading stroke should be loose and broken because continuous smooth shading tends to make an object appear shiny and metallic. How good is that for a piece of advice? Not just for trees, but for the rest of the stuff that you draw as well. And so here's a little more. So you can see as well, it's not just like, oh, this is how you draw a tree branch and give you one example. There's lots of variation as well to take you into the different types of trees. And they've got these little step-by-steps every way. Most of them are like 3 or 4 steps, no more than that. So nothing overwhelming. And again, if you're looking for a specific tree, if you're perfectly capable of drawing and you're just looking to do one tree, you can take 5 minutes to, you know, okay, let's say it's well, I've never drawn a young mulberry bush before. You can just head on here to page 24 and off you go. And, you know, you can go back to whatever it was you're doing and put your mulberry bush in. Really, really good. Really good. So this is fun as well. Root patterns. This is something that I feel like there's a good level of detail here, because when people are giving you instruction on drawing trees, this is often overlooked. And look at these cypress roots. They kind of remind me of mangroves a wee bit. Yep, so we've got the same step-by-step format there. So your basic outline and where your contours are going to be, and then a little bit of shading, and then the rest of the shading. And everything follows that same format, so you know exactly what to expect. And it's just giving you lots and lots of examples. So it's nice to have this section on root patterns as well. Here's probably my favourite part is like the textury part, because I like the textury part. And there's some really nice sort of fuller examples here, so it's not just a branch or, you know, a trunk. It's a collection of these things together, so that this takes you a little bit step further if you're happy enough with your basic drawings. And we've even got a little bit on fallen trees as well. I have to admit I haven't used this. Again, it's just such a nice thing to include. I really feel that this, for £7, this book is all encompassing when it comes to trees. It really, really is. And you can copy these directly to give you a feel for what you're trying to achieve. Oh, we've got a really big example here, look. Turn it on its side. So, I mean, that's fairly detailed, and you can see every single pencil stroke. So even if you wanted to do a bit at a time, you know, you could put your initial sketch down here, which is indicated on these pages, and then you could take your time working on a tiny section just on the shading and the texture, and then build it up from there. And that would actually be a really nice project, you know, if you're looking for something a bit more substantial. Okay, so here is one of the bigger tutorials now, a majestic oak. And this is talking a lot about shadows and how they land on the tree. So again, we've got these little tips and things dotted about, referring to how we are going to tackle the light and shade of it all. And you can see there's quite a lot of variation in there, and there's very, very good and very simple explanations. So now we're on to pines. So these are more of your like sort of project-based trees, and there is a couple of them, and they've deliberately picked ones from the different tree shapes to give you variation and things you can practice as well. I mean, this looks absolutely fabulous, like it really does. I even like the descriptions in the sycamore. It says, in this drawing the tree is old and majestic. That's an old majestic tree, okay. And this is a sycamore. So again, they're talking a little bit about using the side of your pencil, that kind of thing. And there is the finished sketch in at the back. Again, absolutely lovely. So you can see from this, like, obviously I'm super enthusiastic about this book. There's so much in this though. As I say, even if you are a much more seasoned artist, but you maybe, you know, trees aren't your first port of call, this is a really great reference book. Okay, you always know I like to give an example and I like to try something in the book, and I'm so well versed at this, but I think it's worth a demonstration. And I'm just going to do the birch tree trunk exercise here, 3 simple steps, and I am going to do it with an HB pencil because that's what they're using. So I'm just going to grab my sketchbook and my pencil and we'll do a bit of scribble. Okay, so I've got my sketchbook, got my HB pencil, got an eraser just in case, and we're going to take a look at this. And as I say, this is really just to demonstrate how easy it is to follow and the fact that you're going to get results really quickly. So let's look at this first drawing. So really what we want to do is emulate that. So if I create my 2 circles here that are indicated here, so this is A, step A, and I'm going to stick in these branches at the sides. That one's just under there. And then there's some knobbly bits as well, because obviously our tree isn't necessarily going to be completely smooth, straight up and down. Now see, this is the really nice thing. This is what I like about trees. See, if you don't follow something to the letter, it's still going to look good because every tree is individual. So if your knobbly bits aren't exactly in the right place, that's fine. Okay, so I think we can agree there that step A is fulfilled. I make a mess of things. Okay, so you can take that line out in the middle there. It's been such a long time since I've used an HB pencil, I'm like, oh, messy. Just going to take out my guidelines there just to make sure it matches up with what's going on here. Okay, so on to the second step. So we're at part B now. And I like to work methodically with these things. So I would start at the top and I would take into account what was going on from there. So they've actually kept the top line of the ellipse that we drew, which is quite clever. I quite like that. So I'm going to erase my bottom line here. It is more of like a broken line sort of feel though, and it kind of like peters off towards the edge, but that's a-okay as well. And there's another little line underneath there. So I'm literally just copying this as it is. See if we can get something similar. And in the lumpy bumpy bit, we've got another lumpy bumpy bit. And it's just a series of really simple lines. Like, there's no complicated techniques in this book. None whatsoever. So if you are starting from the very beginning and it's all a bit daunting, you do not need to be even remotely concerned because there's no mega advanced techniques. But the simple techniques are used in such a way that they create maximum impact. And that's the way it should be. So I'm going to take out my other ellipse here. I'm actually going to move it down slightly because there's another little set of lines here as well that I just want to add in. And there's some marks there as well. It's almost as if there's maybe dents in the bark, or the white of the bark's peeled away a little bit. Maybe there's been some damage from some birds or something. And then we've got a few more bits here and we'll just finish this off down here. So I would say that looks fairly similar. Okay, and on to the final section here. Use the side of an HB pencil to draw the smooth birch trunk. And although they say that, it's not actually that smooth. So again, I'm going to work from the top here, and this is where you really need to use your observational skills. And if you can't figure out why it doesn't look like the drawing, you just need to go back and have a look at your shading lines. So I'm going to darken down some of these. And then we've got this fun squiggle pattern, like I like that. I like the fun squiggle pattern. And then they're saying the side. Not so good with a mechanical pencil, it has to be said, but... And then that's coming down in there. And there's quite a lot of dark lines here. And I've continued that. And this is really just a case of taking a section at a time, really thinking about what marks have been made where and how you're going to interpret that. Obviously, I mean, you can copy it 100% to the letter, but it's kind of more fun to you know, just deviate, even if it's just a little bit, if you're not overly confident. But as long as you kind of get a feel for what's going on, because obviously I have deviated somewhat from what's been going on here. But you can see down here now, I'm trying to keep this same line of shading while it joins up with the other darker parts as well. It's kind of there for you to do what you like with, honestly. And for me, obviously, having drawn things like this many times over, you know, I'm just having fun down here, like just having a good old time to myself. So there's a really dark part here as well, where this branch on this side comes. So we can see just by the way that they've added the shading and the texture that this branches from further round the back of the trunk, whereas this one's joined on at the front. So again, just looking at the shading there and how that affects the actual branch itself, and that's worth noting. Bring some of that over. And there's some really interesting lines, so like curvy lines, like that's fun. Just to add something a little bit different to what's going on. And then down in this last section here, there's a lot of diagonal lines like this way. So let's try that out. This is a very blunt HB pencil that's been used here, I can tell by the type of marks. Okay, and there you go. So literally a couple of minutes, and you can see there that I've had pretty good fun making my way through some of these marks. Now taking a step back and looking, I can see that these areas are very, very dark and they're kind of popping out, and mine doesn't have that. So now I can go back in and I can add in darker sections here to really make that pop out, and what that's doing is giving me more contrast. And that is something, when I am doing graphite drawings, that's something that happens to me a lot, is I do the drawing and everything's great and I'm really happy with it, and I realise I could be much braver with my darks, so my darks could be darker. I don't do it as much now, but that was a thing for me for a while, and apparently it's quite common for new artists. If they're using graphite, they actually have the potential to use way more contrast, but they don't want to in case they make a mistake. Obviously, I'm past the stage about caring whether I make a mistake or not, because if you make a mistake, well, you learn from it, or it's a happy accident, and that's fine. So there we go. I can work in a little bit more now in some of these areas where the dark areas are, and make them that wee bit darker again. Again, very rarely do I use an HB pencil. This has been a while. It's been a minute. Okay, there we go. So that's better. You can see I've got bits popping out a bit more like our birch tree in the example. So really, really, really nice way to be able to try out different elements of a tree. It's not just there's a trunk and there's some leaves, and you can see that this book goes into a lot more depth, but the actual individual exercises are super good if you're looking something specific, or whether you're just looking to learn at a bite-size rate. So I don't think I need to say any more that the fact that I might quite like this book, but this is one of my favourite tree books. It's not a sentence you say every day. If you have the opportunity to get a hold of one of these, even if it's just to borrow one, I would absolutely go for it. As I say, the only thing for me that lets it down is the size. Like, it's just a really awkward size. And do you know what? It's really nice having this lovely big finished sycamore at the back. And you can really see, a lot of the detail in it, but it's completely unnecessary. They could have done that on a smaller scale and you'd still be able to see everything. So aside from being absolutely gigantic, this gets an overwhelming, huge cave thumbs up. And if I have time later on this afternoon, I'm going to go back to this and draw some more tree stuff on that sketchbook page and just fill the whole page with tree stuff. If I do that, I will share it on Instagram and on the community tab for you as well, just so that you can see what I've been up to. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this book. Are you a tree fanatic, or is it something that you maybe think you should be learning to draw? All and any comments are welcome, of course, underneath the video. And I'll see you back in the cave on Thursday for some more colouring. So have a great day, everyone, and bye-bye for now.